Last year I drove the Kia Forte5 GT and I thought it was pretty great. And what's not to like about a budget-friendly hatchback that looks this good, let alone one that's nice to drive too? I only had one problem with it, no manual transmission. Well, Kia took care of that for 2021, and this 6-speed makes it even more engaging, but more importantly, it drives the price down to the point of being an absolute bargain. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. This is obviously no Volkswagen GTI, but it is a shorter step below that thing than you might expect, and it's also rare. Just take a look at the market. There aren't that many cars these days under 30 grand that are fun to drive, let alone hatchbacks. So the fact this thing even exists should be celebrated. Now let's talk about price. This manual version, well, it's 27.5 grand or so before tax, and that is downright cheap. Just take a look at the 2022 VW GTI that is on its way shortly. That's about 6 grand more, and yes, you are getting a more total performance package, so I'm not comparing the two, but I would definitely give it a long, hard think before I plunk down all that money, knowing this thing isn't that far off and it's going to save you quite a bit of cash. I'd be giving it a serious noodle at the very least. The other thing this has in its favor is that the performance divide between it and the GTI is so big now that this is going to be a lot more fun on the good side of the law. It's a lot more like the Ford Fiesta ST in that way, where you can have all kinds of fun, take a look down at the speedometer and realize you haven't even broken the speed limit yet. And I think there is some serious merit to a car like that in this day and age. Now, obviously, there are some sacrifices here compared to a full-fledged hot hatch like the GTI or even that Fiesta ST. So you don't get adaptive dampers like you can get in that Volkswagen, and there's also no limited slip differential. But that last one makes this thing's ability to get usable torque down to the wheels even more impressive. Under the hood of this thing is the same turbocharged 1.6 liter that Kia and Hyundai will stick in just about anything it makes sense, but that's because it's a really nice little motor. It makes 201 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. Both of those are plenty to have all kinds of fun, and you get all that torque at just 1,500 RPM. And that means as soon as you get rolling, it's all there, it's ready, it's on deck, and you can have a lot of fun as soon as you get your foot down. And the other cool thing is, well, you get all of that all the way up to 4,500 RPM, but it doesn't drop off all that much past that point, so there's still plenty of pull. And I do have to say, this 6-speed manual is a nice match to that motor. Now, it's not perfect. I do have to admit the clutch travel is a little short and it's a bit vague, so it does take some time to get used to it, but not too long. And the same goes with this shifter. It's not the most substantial out there, but more importantly, it's nice and easy to slip between gears and you won't miss a shift, and that part is key. It's even possible to heel and toe downshift with a bit of practice. It's not ideal, but like I said, I did get the hang of it after a couple days. Now, you can't bounce this thing off the rev limiter like you can with a proper performance car, but you can run it up to about 6,500 RPM before it drops off a cliff. But more important than all of that is if you do decide to scale it all back and just cruise around casually, well, it's just as agreeable as any other compact car out there. And it's pretty efficient too, though not on paper. If you take a look at the NRCan listing, I think it says it burns about 8.8 liters per 100 kilometers, which isn't all that great. It's a bit better than the GTI, but it's way worse than your average compact. But in practice, it's reasonably efficient. I went on my 200 kilometer drive loop the other day, and that covers city, highway, a little country driving, and a whole lot of fun. And I burned 6.9 liters per 100 kilometers. That is pretty impressive. It's the same as the automatic version of this thing. And the other thing that really impressed me about it is this revs really high. When you're out on the highway, you're running up around 3,000 RPM. So the fact that it's so efficient really did impress me. Kia really has mastered the concept of cabin simplicity here. And I gotta say, I wish it was just a little more stylish. Don't get me wrong, these seats are amazing, but I wish some of that carried onto the doors and dash. Instead of this silver, if there was some red, it would just give it that kick that this really needs. But as far as cabin simplicity goes, this is the reigning champ. Kia really has nailed the concept, and it starts down here with these HVAC controls, big chunky knobs and buttons, and there's even a separate LCD display so you can see your temperature and fan speed at a glance. And then moving up here, well, you do have an 8-inch touchscreen, but there are a whole bunch of physical controls. These buttons down here, bookended by volume and 2 knobs. I love that. So old school, but so simple. But my favorite one, this button right here, it's a favorite button, so you can use that to call up whatever feature you'd prefer. I have it programmed so that I can hit it and pull up Apple CarPlay instead of having to dive into the menu. And then moving over to the steering wheel, well, it's much of the same. There's another favorite button, but it's disguised as mode. And then there's voice command, volume and tune, phone calls, cruise control. It's all very straightforward and simple. And there are some extra buttons down here by my left knee, so I can turn on or off blind spot monitoring and lane keep assist. It's nice and easy to use. There are some serious Mitsubishi Lancer Sportback vibes to the shape of the Forte 5, and it looks really sleek, but that does cut into how useful this cargo area is. It's a nice and deep space, it's just the height. If you look at the slope of the glass, well, it means there's not a lot of room for tall items in the back. I still give it top marks for practicality though, and it looks good in the process. You know, the space in the second row is really nice too. Headroom up here is just on the limit of not being enough for me, but I do fit fairly comfortably, and there's all kinds of leg room back there, which to me is more important. Now, if you do want something a little bit taller and you're shopping for a Kia, there's always the Seltos, and that thing comes with all-wheel drive, and you can even get it with the same motor, but it's nowhere near as fun. Don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with the Seltos. I actually really like that thing, but this is just more my speed, and it's not just because of the transmission, it's the way it all comes together. It's not just the price either, though keep in mind, this is about $7,000 cheaper than the Seltos SX Turbo, which is the only way you can get this 1.6 liter engine. That is a key fact. But there are some sacrifices when it comes to creature comforts. For example, you can only get the manual transmission in the base version of the Forte 5. So you don't get stuff like ventilated front seats or heated rear seats. Those aren't such a big deal for me, but the bigger one, there's no satellite radio here. And the weirdest part about it, if you upgrade to the automatic transmission in this same trim, you get satellite radio. So I don't understand what that's all about. But otherwise, most of the stuff you would expect in a $27,500 compact hatchback are here. You get heated front seats, a heated steering wheel, lane keep assist, blind spot monitoring, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's a pretty decent selection. There are a few things that are missing, like adaptive cruise control, not such a big deal. The bigger one for me, there's no pedestrian detection with the forward collision warning and automatic emergency braking, and I don't understand that at all, but otherwise it's a nice package for the price. Now, the other thing about the forward collision warning, it's not too sensitive, and that is a problem I have with a car like the Toyota Corolla or the Honda Civic. The emergency systems that are there, they are very sensitive. This doesn't have any of those issues. And the other thing is, both of those cars with similar equipment, they are more expensive than this Forte 5 GT. But more importantly, neither of them are as playful or as fun as this. And that is a very important fact. It also makes this a very rare car in today's market. And if you're shopping for a hatchback, I really think it's worth taking this one for a spin. To recap, I like that the Forte 5 GT finally comes with a manual transmission, the impressive ride and handling, and how sleek and stylish it is. I don't like that you can't get this manual version with satellite radio, that there's no pedestrian detection, or the lack of color and character inside. The Kia Forte 5 GT really does fall somewhere between commuter-first compacts like the Civic and Corolla and a hot hatch like the Volkswagen GTI. And let's forget the fun factor for a second. This car's most impressive attribute was already its value proposition, and that 6-speed manual made it even better. It's that rare blend of a reasonable price tag to go with practicality and driving pleasure that makes this thing a winner in my books.